So, I need to rethink Roaring Delta entirely. For those of you who don't know, Roaring Delta was my big theory back during the Chapter 4 days. It was something I was pretty convinced the game was trying to do, and I built a lot of my smaller theories off that big idea. The idea came to me the instant I saw the Roaring Knight's design. I saw a dark figure trying to bring about something called Hell's Roar. I saw cross-shaped antlers warped into the shape of devil horns, and what are basically inverted stigmatas for hands. I immediately thought of the biblical idea of the Antichrist, the anti-Jesus. Took me a while to figure out if there were two other hell characters I could pair the knight with. I tried Carol, but Carol seemed more like a manipulated sapien rather than a demon. I returned to the idea of Gaster. He's also a demon with inverted stigmatas, and he seems to be in charge of the story to an extent. Definitely the one pulling the strings and making them ring. And then I was at a loss. There had to be a third demon. I just knew there had to be. So I put Device Friend in that spot because he just kind of fit. It would also have made Gaster a sort of anti-Toby Fox, like the darkened version of what Toby exists as in the context of this world. But recent plot points seem to suggest Device Friend is merely one of many. Not a big, intelligent player behind the scenes of things, but an army of similar-looking cat demon things. But then I got to thinking, Eram just fits the role of a dark spirit a lot better than Device Friend does. Eram's the mantle, right? The shadow mantle. It lays over Chaos King's back like one of those symbolic prayer blankets. It strengthens him, maybe controls him to an extent, and then it flies away, proving it's sentient. And Eram also seems to be Friend's boss. Like, the mantle doesn't obey Friend, Friend obeys the mantle. It makes sense that Eram would actually be the entity Gaster uses to take control of others, rather than Device Friend like my original idea was. So now I want to go back to my first Chapter 5 video, where I combined Drowned Knight theory with Roaring Delta theory. I sort of argued how, instead of a father-son dynamic, specifically, these Trinity and Unholy Trinity parallels can really work given any two characters and a third character representing their love for each other. So with Weird Route Chris and Weird Route Noelle, it's more of a childhood friendship type thing. I think I will go with this being my main knight interpretation moving forward, but I know it's kind of an out there take. There can still be an Unholy Trinity without it being an amalgam from a timeline gone wrong. I'll roll with it for this video and discuss how it can actually tie into the themes pretty well. One of the big things that bothered me when I initially made that video is this probably would have been Chris's actual soul, their real soul. And that wouldn't have made sense for there now being like three demons, because like Chris is just Chris's soul. Chris is Chris's body and soul. So like that wouldn't really make sense to me. But then I did get to thinking, Chris had someone else in those days, didn't they? The red headband, the horns. Chris may have made a dark world before, and maybe Eram was actually one of Chris's Darkner friends before Rowsley was. The first Prince of the Dark. Now, Chris, being young and curious, would have led Eram with that mindset, the curious mindset. Life is all about trying new things, trying everything, doing whatever you want, being curious, going out and having fun. Now, let's say Eram takes the sentiment to heart and asks Chris, what if he killed someone? Or I guess for the sake of this video, what if you and Noelle took some bread and glitched through the lake? So, Proto-Chris takes a piece of the headband and puts it into Noelle. Like, takes one of the horns off of the headband and pokes it into Noelle. Maybe this is what the thorn ring is. One of the horns broken off. This crosses hope on Noelle's heart not literal hope, but an acronym, hellish power. So, Chris is a cage with human soul and parts. Noelle is a girl with hope crossed on her heart. And Eram is a headband, a prince alone in deepest dark. So they do the boundary glitch. Chris becomes Gaster, Noelle becomes the Knight, and Eram becomes the Shadow Mantle. Now, another thing, maybe Gaster Chris goes by male pronouns now because Eram's a guy, and Gaster's just letting Eram define his personality. Chris might also be biologically male from birth, who knows. This is a version of Chris and Noelle unaffected by timeline resets, akin to Chara permanently getting your soul at the end of a genocide route. So, Chris and Noelle grow up. They do age, and this is why Gaster's like an 80-year-old man rather than an edgy emo teen. Whether or not these characters are partially amalgamated but eternally linked somehow, maybe because they're the only three unaffected by timeline resets. I don't know if they'd be like stuck together or tied together somehow, or if they are just like three separate entities, but they're still in the darkness together. I don't know. I like to think Deltarune players are always described in either angelic or demonic imagery. Angelic imagery if you do something narratively good or neutral, and then demonic imagery if you do something narratively bad. And it can also tie into the whole, like, devil disguised as the angel of light if you do go on a bad route, because then you're still a demon. You're just pretending to be a good guy, right? I think the Roaring Delta would represent all the quote-unquote bad types of players who would play Deltarune or Undertale. The Knight would represent the player who actively goes through with the weird route or the genocide route. The does bad things guy, the active doer. Gaster would represent the type of player who just sits back and watches it all happen. He's the type of person Flowey thinks is actually worse than a genocide player. The type who gets enjoyment out of watching the bad scenario take place. That's why he sits back and just calls everything very, very interesting. Eram, then, would represent the backseat gamer, the one who tries to demand you play the game a certain way instead of letting you make that choice yourself. Represented by how Eram blocks off all the choices in the Mantle game, leaving you only with the sword route. Now, this is a trio of post-genocide players, basically, and they're all kind of stuck with each other. And they're only ever stuck with, like, the bad outcomes. So, like, you know how, you know, you have to control Chara to do stuff if you, like, replay Undertale, but Chara still gets the final choice in the end. Chara still, like, if you do the pacifist route, if you, like, force Chara to do the pacifist route, Chara will still kill everyone after that. So neither of you are really getting, like, full control over the scenario. You're controlling Chara, and then, like, Chara is controlling what happens afterwards, right? I'd imagine it'd be a scenario kind of like that. Yeah, one of them is just going to do the bad things once they reach the good ending, if they ever do. I don't know if they can do timeline resets where they are right now. I don't know if they have control over the timeline. They might just be permanently trapped in big hell right now. I might be wrong about that. Maybe they do have the power to reset timelines and they were just ended up being stuck outside the timeline. I mean, I could imagine that. I don't really know. It'd need to be explained in Chapter 6, 7, if so. And maybe each one of them wants out of this hellish bind they're stuck together with, maybe for different reasons. Maybe they still enjoy what they can get out of it. Like maybe Gaster summoning a player to the world was an attempt to undam himself, but he also is just interested in seeing what happens as we play. We see the Knight cry at times, but we also see the Knight laugh at times. Eram says he has work to do, implying he's still somewhat subservient to Gaster, but he's also like, isn't it fun, Chris? It's fun to go after the shadow crystals like this. They probably all have to listen to each other to an extent, much like I mentioned with like Char and the Player earlier. Deltarune as a world has to basically create a new Chris, a new Noel, and a new ERAM to accommodate the prophecy. And so it makes what we now know as Chris, Noel, and as for the headband, like the new headband, maybe it's Rousey? Maybe Friend's the new ERAM. I could see this being like in Bionicle, where the Brotherhood of Makuta used the multiversal gate mask to bring in as many alternate universe Takanuvas as they could to build an unstoppable army. It'd be really funny if that's what Friend was. But I could also see these being devices Gaster built as an army. He is probably a doctor. Adult Chris got smarts, I guess. Wait, are we sure original Birdly wasn't Gaster? Could be. So, the Chris of our timeline summons a demon. What do you know? It was the night. Ah! This is the fucking cryptid lurking around Hometown. We all kind of forgot that there was a cryptid lurking around Hometown. It's probably the demon Chris summoned. It's probably one of the Roaring Delta gang. I'm just going to say it's the Night, because it's easiest. The Night tells Chris about what happened in the Night's timeline. How they went down a forbidden route which began with ice magic. And they did it because the Red Headband told them to. The Red Headband could be the Tail of Hell, so instead of the Tail of Hell being Friend, it could be the Shadow Mantle. It does seem to be a trend that we're just applying a lot of our theories that we used to have on Friend and just moving them over to the Shadow Mantle now. So Chris stops hanging out with Noel, willingly hides their headband, and completely rejects their childhood curiosity. Chris then develops the trait of patience. This is symbolized in Aqua. She's curious, and that causes legitimate danger sometimes, but she's just a kid. She doesn't know better. When she gets older, maybe she'll develop guilt and learn patience, but maybe she'll go too far and completely reject curiosity. And so Chris just develops the habit of doing what they're told, which is more akin to like patience than curiosity. I have my whole video on why I think the color red represents curiosity, if you want to go watch that. Now, the prophecy. What wrote the prophecy? Well, I don't think it's a big twist. I think it's just Toby Fox. This is a meta-narrative. He's the storyteller. It makes sense. It is supposed to be the plot of Deltarune, but Gaster and his buddies learned you can reinterpret this thing, can't you? You can't stop it from happening, but you can reinterpret and reorganize it and do some things it doesn't directly mention, which can be both a good thing and a bad thing. I think Gaster is trying to bring about a very specific series of events from these words, and the Night is helping him do it. I think the pictures we see in Chapter 4 are Gaster's interpretation of the prophecy. That's why it's all in capitals and it has this typeface. I believe this even more after Chapter 5. The prophecy does not have pictures, and the words of Asgore's conspiracy notes naturally get mixed up when the Chapter 5 Dark World's made. So it's like the words get mixed up, and also pictures are added, like the pictures that were in the Knight's mind, I guess, that maybe Gaster put into his mind. This is just a possibility. I could see that, like, if the Knight is an amalgam, I could see the idea that the words are just like Gaster's words. Like when Gaster, because he is the Knight, stabs the ground and makes the words, then they appear. But we are also just going to assume that Gaster's, like, in big hell for the rest of this theory, mostly. Only the Knight, it is possible that only the Knight was able to reach the surface because of Chris's demon summonings. So now the Knight has to go free Gaster, and I don't know where Eram is. He's probably playing Minecraft or something. But Gaster does need something very specific. Gaster needs a human soul. Gaster needs a human soul so he can start the prophecy with a new series of 3 heroes who will put things back in order, but probably also get him out of hell. He needs the cage with human soul and parts. And maybe the reason it's called the cage with human soul and parts is because there's a wide range of things that the cage could be, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a human. It could be like a cage that just like has the soul in it, right? Like the golden cage. It could just be that like the cage has the soul in it, and maybe the soul is a human part. I don't know. Could see that. Gaster needs a human soul so he can start the prophecy with a new series of 3 heroes who will put things back in order, but probably also get him out of hell. So the knight kills Des. She's a human with fake deer antlers, and now she's just a collection of memories, a soul. Gaster has her soul now, but has also made enemies with all of Hometown. They don't know who Gaster is, but it's just, in general, Hometown knows that Des went missing, and they don't like the person who made that happen, whoever that is. So Gaster tries to make a new human who will be super obedient to whatever angel ends up getting in charge of timelines. This would be the Goner Maker, the vessel. Now, I think there may have been something akin to a soul swap to subvert this. Chris ends up giving their soul to get Des' soul back. I don't know who performed the soul swap or why, but that really seems to be the only explanation for this point, because Chris needs a soul to basically live. So Chris could not have survived long without the red soul getting to them. So the blue, maybe Chris's real soul is like a light blue soul. Maybe we'll have that as like a soul mode if we end up getting the secret boss that gives Chris's soul back. I don't know. Chris could not have survived long without the red soul getting to them, so this is the only way I can see it working. Now, this can explain a lot. Chris was warned about a small red object that made them do bad things in the past. Chris sees this new red object that has a lot more determination than them, and so Chris is scared. Chris might not even know if it's Des or not. Not only is this red object making Chris do things Chris doesn't want to do, but it's also getting Chris to express their curiosity again. Chris doesn't want that. Chris wants to be patient and do what Carol and Knight say. The Knight says they know what to do to stop what bad thing happened to them. Chris is probably worried that if they don't do every little thing exactly right, bad things will happen. I don't know if Carol is working with or against the Knight. If they are working together, Carol probably doesn't know the Knight's a kidnapper. That might just be a being the two of them feel like they had to trust, because the Knight knows the most about the Dark Worlds and Hell and where Des would have gone. But Des was always more curious than Chris. Always asked questions about their authority figures' motives. Explored different possibilities. Chris is scared of that curiosity. Chris used to look up to Des as a role model, wanted to be like Des when they were younger, but also recently heard about what unrestrained curiosity can do to a person. It might be the same hate one has towards a role model that they ended up not looking up to anymore. It is possible maybe Chris thinks Des did something stupid. Maybe Des' curiosity led to them getting got by the Knight, you know? This could explain Chris's seemingly love-hate relationship with the soul, trying to contain it because they know it's going to get in the way, but also needing it enough to go through with this plan Carol has involving it. It would also make sense why Carol would welcome Des into her home, because it's Des' home. Maybe Des' curiosity is what led to her getting got by the Knight as well, who knows? I wrote that later, but I said that earlier. So now that I got my main theory covered, there are a few things I'd like to consider. Well, first of all, where has the Knight been hiding this whole time? Like, when the Knight's in the light world, where's the Knight hiding? Well, dare I say Sans' house? We get an interesting dynamic between Pink and Orange. Orange sees Pink as a sister, but she actually hasn't been Ori's sister for very long, and Orange just believes that. Like, Pink gaslighted Orange into believing that she was always her sister. We're never told Sans' brother is Papyrus in this universe, and it would explain why Gaster seems to have at least some connection with the Skeleton Brothers. Fuck it, fake brother time. It might also be how Sans is able to tell you need bread for the wrong warp. The knight just told him how to do it. Because how else could Gaster get out of hell? Someone could take his place. I don't know the logistics of that, but it's possible Gaster glitched his Roaring Delta to max stats. He needs someone else to glitch to max stats to kill him and take his place. It's like some Emperor Palpatine aw shit. And the other thing is, what type of sacrifice is the Bunker Gang trying to do on the police? Well, I think it involves a determination extractor. I think Asgore and Undyne are going to get drained of determination so that the Knight has enough power to break through the Twilight Revere and get into Big Hell. And that might be what the Goner Undyne is like foreshadowing. Maybe when you go through the determination extractor machine, you turn into one of those grayed out monster things. And so it is possible Norn being a member of the Gaster cult, he just willingly gives up that determination during the extractor sequence. Maybe this is what all of the Gaster cultists do. Gaster ate Onion San. He ate them. I don't know. My Deltarune discussion videos are never fully fleshed out. These are just some ideas. I don't account for counterclaims a lot because I keep forgetting the evidence that we do have. I am a mess at Deltarune theories. Other people can construct like these big conspiracy webs and like keep track of every little thing that they're saying. I don't really do that. I present some ideas and some of them contradict each other in the same video. The main point here is that I did want to rethink Roaring Delta, and after I did rethink it, it gave me some more ideas which I wanted to talk about. That was kind of like the main point of this video. So yeah, as with most other Deltarune theorists at this point, ERAM has just replaced Friend in everything I said about Chapter 4.